Hey there, it's Mark from MVI Welding and MV International. Today we're going to be working on a move bumper for a Chevy Silverado, and I'm going to take you through the steps of how to fabricate and install that bumper on this truck. So the first thing you're going to want to do is get all your parts out of the box, lay them out, the basic centerpiece, left and the right side over here, the caps that go on to with the extensions, the trim pieces, and we elected to go for some of these heavy duty off-road clevis mounts. As long as we're talking about the steel, one thing you're going to want to do is, it's all flame cut, it looks like, and you're going to want to go ahead, take these parts and run them across the grinder or sanding belt of some sort and knock those down to your own liking of how you want the finish to be on this final welded project. So let's talk about some of the stuff you're going to need to do the job. Obviously got a set of tools over here. You're going to have some various wrenches, some metric trucks, so they're all metric, screwdrivers, some of these little handy pin pulls to get some of the bumper trim apart, impact gun if you got a small one, doesn't really take too much, impact sockets, F-clamps, small hammer for alignment. These magnets are quite valuable for assembling everything, get it ready to go. You might need a drill bit or two, and other basic clamps, tape measure, and an angle gauge. And that's pretty much for the disassembly of the truck. Obviously you're going to need a welder and some grinders. So basically you've got to remove the bumper assembly. The easiest way to do this on most trucks is to pull a couple of these side bolts out, the bottom bolt, take the whole thing out, and then you have full access to the back side of the bumper, and you can remove all the clips and bolts and pins, and basically you'll end up with this frame. On a Chevy truck anyway, that frame is integral to the strength of the trailer hitch, so you want to put that back in the truck and have it. And then what's new, these are the parts off of the move kit which tie back here in the frame on both sides, and you just want to make sure you get them set so they're equal and level, and in parallel with what the truck was from the original bumper. I went ahead and drilled these little holes here. I had an axis hole on both sides of the frame. I drilled that as a through hole to go through there, and then I'll put a third bolt in there. That'll help just keep it all aligned as I go ahead and do that and keep this stuff from moving ever. Keep all your wiring harness. We'll come back to this. You're going to need to have these parts, and we'll pull a template off the a bumper when we get ready to do that. So as with any welding project, you're going to want to go ahead and bevel all these edges up so you get a good V channel, 45-degree bevel on the parts. And these parts all come together to be the main section. This will obviously be like the step on the truck, the center part. And it's critical you have a really good welded joint in there, so you're going to want to bevel all these edges. I'm not going to show you all this, I'll just knock one of them down for you. So now it comes to fabricating the centerpiece and the two main sections of the bumper, left and right. It's important to note your table has to be flat, and if you got any high points on it from slag or anything, go ahead and knock them down so that there's nothing on your table. Check it for level, make sure it's flat. And then the other thing is, the top of the bumper, like this is the right hand side, this surface is going to have to be flat, so you're going to want to deburr these edges, because at the end of the day we're going to flip this bumper up like that when we lay it out and weld it. And I don't want to have a burr on here keeping things out of it. So just cleanly and easily make sure that top surface is clean. So I did notice that this right here has a little high spot in it, and that's just a residual of the plate, during the forming process or something. But that had a little wow in it there, so that would have been high on the surface when I flipped it over. So go ahead and clean the center, the left and right main sections the same way. Alright, this one had a couple of tooling marks or some sort of damage. I don't know how it is. But, you know, a little high spot right here that had to be knocked out when they cleaned that off. So now we got all three pieces together. We're going to set the center one up using some 90-degree square angles like this. I'll show you that trick. And then we'll move on to aligning the bumper and welding it together. Stand this bumper up on a straight line. And this has a nice 90-degree bend to it. I'll show you that in a minute. So a nice little trick you can do is you got an aluminum rule like this. Just lay this out and square it all up so you know those are straight in a line. You've got a nice 90-degree surface on all of these magnets, and nothing's here blocking the surface of it. So given that, now we can take the center section for move. And line that up like that, right on those magnets. And I've got a nice, good 90-degree surface here and a nice work surface to work to. And then I have these heavy magnets. I can also apply them to really clamp that down to the work surface. These are 400-pound magnets, and they work really good to hold everything into position. So that's really solid now. And from there, I can go ahead and get back to my slide rule, lay out my center section, and then start piecing this together here to be back up where it has to fit, and throw a magnet on there, get it square. Yeah. Got it square, clamp it down, and now that's ready to get tacked. But what I want to do is I'm working about this front surface of the bumper, right? That's the important part, not the back. So this looks like it's got to roll over just a little bit to have a little bit of pressure to make that front surface nice and equal. And that's what I want to have, right? I want to have this front surface right here pulled up nice and flat on the front, because that'll be showing. The rest of this I'll fill with weld, and I've got a nice gap here to do that. I'll gap this again, and then we'll fill in the other corner pieces. But if you got something moved on you a little bit, tap it back into place, and I've got a nice straight line of that. I'll do the other side the same way. So I've got everything arranged about where I want it. Make sure it's exactly where it needs to be. And then I've got my table grounded. So I want to put a nice tack right in here. Just to hold that together. Double check it, looks good. And then we'll move on to a second tack, a little heavier. So we got some good penetration into there. And now it's back to the story of straightening out the front face of the bumper where that needs to be to hold it tight. I think you can draw that in nicely with a F-clamp if you need to. Oh, as I mentioned before, I've got these holes in here I've added to match up with the chassis hole here, and bolts I have. I've got to open this up just a little bit. And then I'll put in a thick washer, 5/8 graded hardware. Has a spacer in here, so when this goes back in the frame, I've got this gap accounted for. All right, before we set the bumper up there, I'd mentioned there's a factory hole here. I'm going to carry that hole through into the move plate here, and then install these bolts. So I just have to open that hole up a little bit. Got these bolts here tightened in. It's both sides. It's shimmed. It's attached to the truck. It's where we want it to be. Now's the first time we put the bumper to the truck and kind of see how that fits. So, not too bad, is it? It's got to go in and over a little bit. And just to show you, that's sitting here on this mount. I'm going to shim that up, make a little gap. And what I'll probably do is put some pads up on here to set the bumper where I want to have it sit, to have it rest. As this rides back, this is going to come down and hit the surface. Right now I think it's hitting right in here. So, as you can see, if you can lift it up a little bit, it goes quite a bit farther back. And it nicely clears all the OEM structure. So now it's a matter of getting some temporary shims in here and then tacking along the line on both sides once I get it adjusted, and then it's to the truck. At that point, we start tacking in the other pieces. But first, let me get some shims over here and get this thing lined out, make sure it's level, and check the gap on the tailgate. We don't want that thing opening and hitting this. So the gap here is a little larger than I kind of anticipated with the thick fender washer, the heavy washer. So I took some 1/4 inch steel, gauged that back. That fits pretty good in there, and we'll slide that through. And when I'm done, I'll weld this spacer right to these plates, so they go to powder coating along with everything else. And that'll now tighten up the frame, or the frame bracket, nicely to the truck. And then we've got 3 points of contact in that joint. We've got a small Miller-Matic 210 portable job, easy to move around. We're going to bench weld this whole thing later, but I want to tack it all in, and so it stays there. So we've got the bumpers firmly attached to the truck. There's no doubt about that. And we got to start figuring out how these pieces go together. From the paperwork, it looks like these top pieces just kind of fit into place here. Gotta be careful to not scratch the truck. But this return will kind of wrap around there. You'll see it. And it lines right up like that, follows the contour of the truck. These magnets, man, they're a lifesaver. They can clamp them on there. You can see it's pretty much where it has to be. We'll get the other 2 pieces and fit them in here now. Now you got his cap plates on. This is all held in place by this one magnet. I'm going to put a magnet up here to maintain that edge and what it should be on to keep it flush. And then I want to suck this up down here. It's still a little loose. And I want that to be flush on this surface here. So I'll put another magnet in there, Now it's all pretty rigid. I can move it around still, it's just magnets. But it's pretty much where it needs to be. Let me grab the other piece. So, here we are again on the left side of the truck. Gonna start figuring out how this one goes together. Looks like just the same as the other side. We'll go ahead and put a magnet on here. Suck that up. And one down here. And get it all lined up. I'd say that looks pretty good. All right, we've got this, I think, where we want it. I'm gonna go ahead and start tacking it up. All right, well, the last couple pieces that complete the bumper are the trim pieces that have to go in. And the easiest way to do that is just put a magnet on one of them, and then you can take it, set it in there. See how nice it fits flush up front, flush on the top, and you can either add another magnet to it or just tack it in place there if that's where it needs to go. And I think I don't know, it looks pretty good like that. I think I'll just tack it where she is. And we had a trailer hitch plug on here. So I'm going to show you an easy way to keep the factory mount and the factory plug, which is still under the truck. We're going to scavenge that out of the other bumper. So let me go show you that. So here's the factory bumper, license plate, fifth wheel hitch or trailer hitch plug in, and these little cutouts here that the license plate lights go into. So this is steel, this is all plastic. I'm just going to come in here and mark this out with a paint pen, and I'm going to cut that out on the back side, and I'm also going to mark a line here that shows me which direction is up. Okay, and then I know where that is, and then put that back on the truck. So now we have the trailer plug piece off the bumper, and I want to square up my drawing a little bit. The easy way to do that is I know I want to be flat across the top. I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut a line along there, and then I'll trim out parallel just like this, so I got a little extra material for movement on there. So the next step is take it over to the bandsaw. So I went back and I trimmed the top of that off a little bit to square that plate up a little bit, and gives me a little easier access maybe to mount it like that. So I think that's about it. It's time to take the bumper off the truck and throw it up on the bench. So I think we've also makes a good idea to mount a set of lights in there. These will actually be flush mounted from on the back side here, and cut a hole one of these locations. This is where that brace is, and just realize what throws up from the back tire, it's all going to get in the cooling fins. So I'll have to think through this once I get it up on the bench and see what it looks like. Okay, made these shims when I put that on the frame, and that third hole I added on each side. These have to be cleaned up with a nice beveled edge on the front, so when I slide that bumper back in, it won't get caught or hung up on anything. And remember, it's all going to be powder coated, so I want to take off the scale of this That's kind of the thickness of it. So we finally got the bumper off the truck and got it up on a motorcycle lift here, so it's easier to work on. And remember the shims I'd made? I've got those bolted in place here, and I'm going to weld those in right to the bracket. That's a permanent shim, so that when the frame of the truck slides in here and I clamp on both sides of the bracket from the truck, that third hole is now going to pick it up. I also want to add a small return flange just back here. I cut some angle pieces. I got one for each side, and I'm going to set these in here like so, and just to give a nice C-channel attachment to here, because we're going to put that big heavy D-ring on the outside of that. So now it's got some little reinforcement on it. So now that we have both sides tacked into place, most of these spacers into place, I'll go ahead and start burning this one in. Alright, well, I've just been working on going in and finish welding some of the stuff up, and I guess I'll do that and fast forward through the video a little bit. A fair amount of grinding. Here's that part I cut out of the truck.
When you go to a Dallas community college, there are two words you get used to hearing. You're hired. See, when you choose a Dallas community college, you're not just paying for an education. You're hiring a career coach. You're hired. With courses designed to help you achieve, help you succeed, and training that makes you job ready. You're hired. There's a Dallas Community College near you. Or go to dcccd.edu. Dallas Community Colleges. Higher education that actually gets you hired. What does your voice sound like? Goodbye, baby. She's falling asleep.
Here we are on the last day of 2018, which means there's still time here to save a boatload of money at Southwest Chevrolet in Kaufman. It's Angela Chase. All month long, you've been able to purchase any brand new 2018 Chevrolet at employee prices. And that discount also applies to the 2019 Traverse Equinox in Colorado. Now, I imagine you're thinking that would be fantastic, but it's New Year's Eve, so can I even purchase the vehicle today? Well, the answer is yes. Southwest Chevrolet is open. And another deal you may want to consider is this just for Jack listeners. And that is 17.
That's how it's going to go in. Like for like.
Texas Edition 4x4. Now, to get that, you do need to speak with GM Justin Ross.
So I took the pieces out of here, put them in the press, bent them to match this angle on the other side of this clevis here. And I'm going to weld that in just to reinforce the back of that clevis where the pressure is going to be for pulling on that winch point. And same thing for the other side. So yeah, there you go. So that should gosh, I just don't know what else to do. I think that's about it. Send it off powder coating. Flip it over and make sure everything's clean on the back side here. That's it. So that's the new Silverado bumper. Factory trailer hitch. LED lights. They'll fit in there just like that. V-rings, those are nice. I think it's ready to go to powder coat. So there's the final product after powder coat, installed back on the truck. Factory GM plug that we cut out. We added those lights and it all looks pretty good. Very happy. Another fine product from Move Bumpers, brought to you by MVI.